Welcome back to the Smartbuild implementation series. We're in part 13, sheeting assemblies. And looking back, this is one of the tougher topics to cover in Smartbuild and the setup, and there's just a lot to think about. And one question that comes up is for our customers that have used Smartbuild for a long time, maybe 5 years or more. The question is, well, I have packages set up, so how are assemblies different than packages? And why would I want to take the time to set up sheeting assemblies? And one of the first things is, yeah, packages do work. And if you're starting out with the generic database, there are some packages in there that you can look at as examples. And we'll cover packages in another session. But when it comes to sheeting products and trim products and the panel or the trim line, the question is, are we applying the same products to that trim line on all areas of that project? And if that's true, packages work fine. Where that starts to fail is on more complex, like barn dominium projects or multiple wing projects, where you may want to do something, maybe metal with a certain underlayment under one roof section, and it's something different under another. And to accomplish that, packages do not handle that, so we need to talk about assemblies. So I guess getting into assemblies and some examples of what I have set up here. And when we look at this roof here, we have asphalt shingles. This is one of the tougher assemblies to set up, but I want to talk about it just for a little bit. So looking at it, you just see the asphalt shingle from the bottom side and the top. So that's all you're seeing. That's the only product we're showing. But that doesn't mean that's the only thing there. So the question is, well, how are these other items coming into this job or to this material list? When I look at, accessories, I have roofing nails, I have some staples, I have some underlayment, some felt. And if I would look at my sheeting products, I have some asphalt shingles and even some OSB for the roof. And obviously that's coming from an assembly. So when I look at my roof sheeting, it says asphalt shingle with 5/8 OSB and epaulet felt. And jumping over into the setup wizard. So for this video, we'll be going to settings, setup wizard again, and in the sheeting assemblies, going to be the area we're focusing on. Starting out with the examples that we have here, I do have an asphalt shingle assembly set up. If you're starting out with the generic database, you have this sample set up. Now, if you're a customer that's just coming back and trying to review these implementation videos, and maybe you don't have these generic assemblies set up for you, the question is, well, how do I get these? And hopefully by the end of this call, you will understand how to create your own by following these simple steps. So when we look at what's in this asphalt shingle, we have a primary material, and then we have some items with it. So if I were just creating this from scratch and ignoring this being here, I simply start out with the plus sign. So I click here and I start creating this assembly. And I have to have the product that I want to use has to be in my list here. So when I look at already defined, here's asphalt shingles. So this would be the primary product. And then what do I want that to list out as on a quote or in the job? It would say asphalt shingle, with whatever else, with OSB and felt. I'm just going to abbreviate this, so you understand, okay, this is what we're going to add to this, and obviously it's going to have fasteners in it when we get done. So we need to identify what system it's going to be part of. So we're going to put this in the shingle system so it can be used when I select shingles. It can only be used on the roof. And now what all comes with that? So we click the add new, and we start with, we can obviously skip over the clip, but I like to start with the decking part. So we start with that first layer decking, and we want to put this in sheeting because it is a sheeting product. Now we find the material. Depending on where your OSB is, or plywood, whatever you're using, you may have to go to hardware. Mine is in sheeting. That's where it works best. So if it's in sheeting, you could find your OSB, whatever that product is, click on it and click apply. And the coverage, you can put in a square footage. Now, if you look at 4x8, it's obviously 32 square feet. But do we want to add a waste factor? And in some cases, you may want to set this to like 30 square feet so that if the roof comes out really close or you're wasting a little bit on the cutoff ends, you would probably still have enough by doing this. So whatever works for you, you can adjust this. And this is applying, again, compared to your asphalt shingle. So it's figuring out the total square footage of asphalt shingles, and then it's going to figure so many pieces of OSB with that. So we have this set up. Now you can do things like conditions. You have this whole group of conditions that you could add to this. For OSB, I'm not going to add any conditions. I'm going to skip over this. So every time I use shingles, I'm going to have this OSB come through automatically. Okay, we want to add other items. So I start with maybe underlayment. We find our underlayment item. Maybe it's a felt. Just search for felt here if you have felt in your catalog. If you don't have these items in your catalog, obviously you'd have to go back to the hardware step and add these items to your hardware. So I put this in here, and this is a good example. We'll use this as a use case for, this felt, let's say it's a 200 square foot row. So every time it knows, okay, this row will cover 200 square feet. So it knows how many rows to calculate. Now the special condition may be that if the roof pitch is, and you could search for pitch. One example is if some people are doing, if the maximum pitch in this project is, I could do greater than, which is greater than, if there's a pitch steeper than maybe 6/12 pitch, I would use this field, or maybe it's the other. If it's less than whatever, so you could do either way. And in some cases, people want to use a thicker felt product if the pitch is greater. So I could say if the maximum pitch is less than 6, use this felt. Now save that. Now I could take this exact item here and just copy it. And here we could go again. And this time I'm going to pick the thicker felt, and we're going to say the 30-pound felt. And then I'm going to say if the pitch is greater than or equal to 6, use this 30-pound. And maybe it has a different coverage. Maybe it's 300 square foot. You just have to know your product and how many square foot coverage it has. So now I have these two different use cases. So depending on the pitch of the building, now it will apply a different felt in that case. And again, it's totally endless on what the possibilities are here. It's just one example. So what else needs to be added to the material list when I'm doing these items or this product? And you may have something like a fastener. And if it's a nail for the shingle itself, so I could go to fastener, maybe I have some roofing coil nails. And again, I don't know how many square foot a coil is going to cover. Maybe it will cover 200 square foot of roofing. And that's all I need to do for that one. And just moving on through here, you can obviously add more items, like maybe you want to have staples for the felt or something else. But when you're done and you click save, now we've created this OSB and felt along with the asphalt shingle. So it's a package item. Think of it as an assembly of items. That's why we call them assemblies, obviously. So that when you're in a job and you choose that assembly, you get all those products with it. So that's a really quick rundown of asphalt shingles. Now there's obviously a little bit more that goes into asphalt, obviously setting up those parts. So to make that all happen, we have to have the felt set up in hardware. We need to have some shingle nails set up in here, maybe staples, anything else that we needed in that assembly has to be put in these categories. So sometimes you have to jump back when you get to setting up these assemblies. So the next thing is, okay, let's look at our most common. This one's a little bit easier to set up, like an ag panel. And the primary material is our ag panel. And if we look at that in a job, yes, again, all that you're seeing is the ag panel on the roof. You're not seeing anything else that comes with it on the underside. So we have the ag panel there. And if you look at it, so what comes with that? And my default sheeting assembly is just an ag panel with nothing else. Maybe I want to list this out with a standard fastener. So it's an ag panel with standard fastener. And again, this will list out on my quote page. So it's nice to have a really good description. Maybe you have to abbreviate it to keep it from getting too long. But it is nice to fully list out what that item and what all is in that assembly. So we have the ag panel, and we're going to get this screw with it. So if we wouldn't have this set up already, let's look at what this would look like. So if I just delete this item, let's act like we're setting this up from start. So we select our primary material, we choose the ag panel, we give it a name, and then we have to put it in its system that it could be used in. So we put this in here, and then where can it be used on the wall or roof, wainscot? Set this up. So we select items on the right list and move them to the left. And then the next thing is the entries. So it defaults to clip every time. That's just the first item. So we want to switch to fastener. And then we talk about, okay, it will put this fastener, if I'm in a job, it'll put it in the accessories category, which is fine. And now I want to find my screws. So if I look at, maybe I call mine wood binder. 1.5" wood binder, apply. So the question is, well, how many screws do you put when you're calculating these screws for a roof? And the answer may be 1 per square foot. Maybe that's your standard calculation. Now, some people would do like trying to follow the purlins. And usually it works best just to try to find an average square foot and make this work, because if you want to have it follow the purlins or the girts, when you do that, maybe it's different from wall to roof, and then it starts to get really, really complicated. But square foot seems to work as an average. If you can find an average that works for you and just use square foot, it seems to work the best with sheeting assemblies. Now, again, you could do special conditions again. you may say that if the roof pitch is, a certain, maybe it's a really flat pitch, you would do a special fastener. So you could do a special condition if the special condition is if the pitch is, search for mine. So if the maximum pitch is equal to, or if it's less than 2, we would use this fastener. That's just an example. And again, you don't have to have this special condition. You can delete these. If you accidentally create one, you can just delete it off of there and it just goes away. So even though it's here, it's not doing anything. So that's what special conditions do. But if I save this, now we've got our assembly. We can save that, and we've got our first assembly. Now, if you look at this, and if we compare this with the packages in a job, the thing that you may notice in some of the generic databases, or things that you have set up, maybe you have a database for a while and you've got like roof insulation, single bubble, things like that. If you look at all these different options, so yes, that means we need to, if we want to eliminate using packages or avoid using packages, so we have more control in a job. So we could select, okay, on this roof, we want to select maybe just a standard metal with an underlayment. And on this roof, we want to do spray foam and whatever those options may be. We have to create all those different assemblies. So it may sound a little overwhelming to begin with, but the good thing is we have a copy feature. So you can select this and click this little copy button. So as soon as you copy it, it automatically opens it up again, and you can restart. You have everything here that you did have, except you can add to it. So this version may be with insulation. I'm just throwing an example out there. So with insulation, and that's the name that would show up on the quote page. Now we need to obviously add that insulation product. So you could go to your add new, and if you don't have the insulation in here, we'll label it as underlayment for now. But if you don't have the insulation, you would obviously have to go back and add it to your hardware items. So I'm picking 1-inch Amafoam. I click apply. Okay, what is this product square foot? Maybe it's a 4x8 sheet, so it's 32 square foot coverage. Again, you could adjust that if you want to figure a waste factor. And I click save. So now I have a new assembly with insulation. Or if I want to include fasteners for that insulation, I need to obviously add the fastener. So I go back to fasteners. So type fastener, find my material. I'm in the fastener category. Maybe I use a plastic cap to fasten my insulation. So I have some plastic caps in here, click apply, and maybe there's 200 in a 1 pound. So depending on if you have your selling unit set up, and again, we covered the selling units in the fastener setup, so you have to understand how these work together. If you haven't watched the fastener and the hardware video, maybe you watch that and come back to this. But depending on how you set your selling units, you have to account for that in here. So if you just look at this, if you have your selling units for plastic caps set up, then you could simply answer this question. So how many nails per square foot? And if I say 1 per square foot, or maybe it's not quite that much, maybe it's 0.5, a half per square foot of roof. And I click save. Now I have my plastic caps, I have my wood binder screws, and I have the foam. So these are all coming with this ag panel. And you just continue on. And when you have these all set up, and this list may get long, we have some companies that have even as many as 300 assemblies. That could happen. That's where it really gets to be important. If you get to have very many of these, you want to make sure you have systems set up so that when you're in a job and you go to your main building settings, you click the product system, it filters down that list so you only see that group of items. So if I set this to ag panel, I would only see my ag panel choices or whatever, but it only shows that group of items. So if you get a lot of different variations of one panel, then that kind of makes you take a step back and you consider setting systems up if you've not done that. And then that makes your drop-down list much shorter. So if I'm in a job and I try to select the wall product, and I have this one set to vinyl, so when I go to wall sheeting and I click on the wall material, I've only got 2 options, and these are my vinyl products, and then none. So there's really a lot more options here. The rest are just hidden because they're of a different product line. So that's how that kind of works together. So sheeting assemblies, I think that kind of wraps up, the really important things you need to know. Obviously, you can reach out to a support team, but it's one of the harder things to understand is how assemblies work and why don't I just keep using packages because that's what I've always done, or they may seem easier to set up. But assemblies, again, when you have a system that's fully set up, you can then go to advanced edit and you can choose any roof or any wall section. In this case, if I want to do something different on just these 2 roofs, I could pick just this roof. I could go to my details, and when I go to my roof sheeting, I could set it to just a different product or a different assembly. Maybe it's a different underlay. And that's what assemblies do for you. So that's a lot of information in a short amount of time. You can always rewatch the video and skip back if you miss some parts, but hopefully this helps everyone, and we'll see you next time.